She wore a hotel blazer and a professional smile, handling complaints about lukewarm coffee and slow room service with endless patience. The guests saw exactly what they expected to see. Another overworked manager at a luxury hotel, attractive but forgettable, there to solve their problems and then disappear. But when three armed men stormed the lobby at 2 a.m. and took hostages, she didn't panic. Her voice stayed calm as she negotiated. Her eyes tracked every threat with precision, and when the moment came, her hands moved with muscle memory that made the SWAT commander go pale. Because before Sarah Mitchell managed the night shift at the Grand Meridian Hotel, she had spent 5 years attached to SEAL Team 3, operating in places where being a woman meant being invisible until the moment you needed to be lethal. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this story of hidden warriors and impossible calm, tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe some heroes wear blazers instead of body armor, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who still protect, even when the mission's over. The Grand Meridian Hotel occupied 12 floors of prime real estate in downtown Chicago, catering to business travelers and tourists who wanted luxury without pretension. 5-star service, marble lobby, the kind of place where everything ran smoothly because dozens of people worked invisibly to make it happen. The night shift was quieter than days, fewer guests, smaller problem, but someone still had to be there when the 2 a.m. pipe burst or the businessman locked himself out of his room. Sarah Mitchell had been the night manager for 3 years. At 39, she possessed the kind of understated beauty that people noticed but didn't quite remember. Blonde hair pulled back in a neat bun, minimal makeup, blue eyes that seemed attentive but never intrusive. She wore the hotel's standard black blazer and slacks, moved through the lobby with efficient grace, and maintained the sort of professional warmth that put guests at ease without inviting familiarity. The staff respected her. She never raised her voice, never threw anyone under the bus, and had a gift for diffusing angry guests before they could escalate. The general manager had tried to promote her to day shift multiple times, but Sarah always declined. She preferred nights. Quieter, fewer people, less chance of anyone asking questions about the 3-year gap in her resume, or why someone with her education was managing a hotel instead of running a corporation. That Thursday night started routinely. Sarah arrived at 2020, relieved the evening manager, reviewed the night's occupancy and any flagged issues. A wedding party on the 8th floor that might get loud. A VIP guest in the penthouse who required discretion. 3 conventions, checking out early in the morning. Normal variables for a Thursday in October. By midnight, the lobby had cleared except for the overnight desk clerk, 2 security guards making rounds, and the occasional late arrival. Sarah was reviewing next week's staffing schedule when her instincts pinged. Nothing obvious, just a subtle wrongness in the atmosphere. She looked up from her computer. 3 men had entered through the main doors, all wearing hoodies despite the warm lobby, hands in pockets, moving with the kind of casual vigilance that set off alarms in Sarah's mind. She watched them in the reflection of her computer screen. Not obvious, just aware. They spread out. 1 toward the elevators, 1 toward the front desk, 1 staying near the doors. Military spacing, not random, coordinated. Sarah's hand moved slowly toward the panic button under her desk, but the man near the front desk pulled a gun before she could press it. "Nobody moves, nobody dies," he announced, his voice carrying the practiced calm of someone who had done this before. "This is a robbery. We take what we want. We leave. Simple." The night clerk, a college kid named Marcus, froze with his hands visible. The 2 security guards, both older men working post-retirement jobs, reached for their radios, but stopped when the second gunman's weapon swung toward them. "Radios on the desk, now." They complied. The 3rd gunman locked the main doors, flipped the sign to closed. Sarah's mind ran through probabilities and options with the clarity of someone trained to assess threats under pressure. 3 armed men, coordinated, professional enough to control the space immediately, not amateurs. The question was whether this was pure robbery or something more complex. "You," the leader pointed at Marcus. "Empty the front desk cash drawers." "You," pointing at one security guard. "Kill the security cameras." "You," pointing at Sarah. "Get everyone out of the back offices. Everyone in the lobby where we can see them." Sarah stood slowly, hands visible, posture non-threatening. "There are only 4 staff members on this ship. Everyone's already here." "Then sit down and shut up." Sarah sat, but her mind kept working. The way they positioned themselves showed training. The way they spoke showed discipline. This wasn't desperation. This was planned, which meant they had studied the hotel's security, knew the overnight staffing, understood the response time for police, professional criminals, or worse. The leader pulled out his phone, checked something, nodded to his partners. 12 minutes. We're good. 12 minutes until what? Sarah's tactical mind ran scenarios. 12 minutes for police response if an alarm was triggered, 12 minutes until a shift change, or 12 minutes until until something else happened that she couldn't yet see. "All of you, phones out. Put them on the desk." They complied. Sarah placed her phone down, but her eyes were scanning constantly. Exits, cover position, threat angles, old habits, impossible to turn off. "You're very calm," the leader observed, studying Sarah with more attention than she wanted. "Most people are crying by now." "Crying doesn't help anyone," Sarah replied evenly. "Smart." He moved closer, and Sarah could see his face more clearly now under the hood. Mid-30s, scar across his left cheek, eyes that had seen violence and accepted it. "What's your name?" "Sarah Mitchell, night manager." "Well, Sarah Mitchell, here's how this works. You do exactly what I say. Everyone goes home alive. You try to be a hero, people die. Understand?" "I understand. What do you need from us?" "Access to the penthouse safe. The VIP guest. I know he's carrying high-value items. You're going to get me in there." Sarah's mind clicked. The VIP was a diamond merchant, here for a private showing tomorrow. His merchandise was in the penthouse safe. Hotel security, plus his own private security. That's what this was about. Not a random robbery, a targeted theft. "I can give you the hotel safe access," Sarah said calmly. "But the penthouse has a separate security system controlled by the guest's private security. I don't have those codes." "Then you're going to convince his security to open it." "They won't. They're professionals. They'll lock down and wait for police." The leader's jaw tightened. This wasn't going according to his plan. "Then you better figure something out, because if I don't get into that safe in the next 10 minutes, I start shooting hostages until someone cooperates." Sarah held his gaze, her expression calm despite the threat. She had heard similar threats before, in Kandahar, in Kabul, in compounds where she'd had to negotiate with men who thought women were invisible. She'd learned that showing fear was often more dangerous than showing nothing. "If you shoot anyone, you lose your leverage, and the police response time drops to minutes," Sarah said, her voice steady and logical. "Let me call the penthouse. I'll explain the situation to the private security. They're reasonable people. They'll understand that protecting merchandise isn't worth dying for." The leader studied her for a long moment, trying to read whether she was stalling or actually helping. "5 minutes. That's how long you get. And if you try anything clever, someone dies." Sarah picked up the desk phone, dialed the penthouse. While it rang, her mind ran through tactical options. The private security upstairs were ex-military, probably armed, definitely trained. If she could signal them somehow, give them a heads up that this was happening, they might be able to respond. But any wrong move would trigger violence. The phone picked up. "Penthouse security, Rodriguez speaking." "Rodriguez, this is Sarah Mitchell, night manager. We have a situation in the lobby. 3 armed men demanding access to your safe. They're holding staff hostage." There was a pause. "How many hostages?" 4. Front desk clerk, 2 security guards, and myself. "Your status?" "Currently unharmed. Situation is under control, but they're demanding penthouse access within 5 minutes." Another pause. Rodriguez was processing, probably alerting his partner, probably moving to defensive positions. "We're locked down. They'd need explosives to get through this door. My advice is you stall and wait for SWAT." "That's not an option they're offering," Sarah replied, knowing the leader was listening. "They're professionals. They've planned this. What are your recommendations?" Rodriguez caught the subtext. She was telling him these weren't amateur. They'd planned well, which meant they probably had contingencies. "Can you get to a safe position if this goes sideways?" "Not currently." "Then I'll see what I can do. Give me 3 minutes." Sarah hung up. "They're considering it." 3 minutes. The leader wasn't happy. 3 minutes is 2 minutes too long. They need to talk to their principal, get authorization. You know how private security works. They can't make decisions without approval. I know how stalling works too. That's when Sarah noticed movement outside the glass lobby doors. A police car rolling past slowly, probably routine patrol. The officer inside glanced at the hotel, kept going. None of the gunmen reacted, which meant they'd planned for police presence, weren't worried about casual patrols. "Your plan is solid," Sarah said, keeping her tone professional, almost conversational. "You timed this well. Overnight shift, minimal staff, private security that won't call police immediately because they don't want attention on their merchandise. You've done your homework." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You're very calm for someone with a gun pointed at her." "Panicking won't change anything. I prefer to focus on solutions." "You former military or something?" Sarah paused for just a fraction of a second. "I've worked in hospitality for a long time. You learn to handle crises calmly." But the leader had caught the pause. He stepped closer, studying her with more intensity. "That's not an answer. Where'd you work before this hotel?" "Various properties. Nothing relevant." "I think it's very relevant." He pulled out his phone, took her picture before she could react. "Let's see what we find out about you, Sarah Mitchell." Sarah's heart rate increased slightly, though her expression didn't change. If he ran her photo through any law enforcement database, if he had connections to people who could access military records, her cover would blow. and that would complicate everything. The phone upstairs rang. Sarah answered. "Rodriguez, we have a problem," Rodriguez said. "Someone just tried to hack our elevator access. They're attempting to override the penthouse floor lockout." Sarah's eyes flicked to the gunman near the elevators. He had a laptop out, working on something. "I see. How long until they succeed?" "Maybe 5 minutes with the firewall we have, but if they're sophisticated, maybe less." "Understood." Sarah hung up, looked at the leader. "Your tech guy is trying to hack the penthouse elevator. That's smart, but their security is better than you thought. You've got maybe 5 minutes before their system locks you out permanently and auto-alerts police." The leader's expression shifted. This wasn't going as smoothly as planned. "Then we speed this up. You're coming with me to the penthouse. If their security won't cooperate, you're going to be my negotiating chip." He grabbed Sarah's arm, not roughly but firmly, pulling her toward the elevators. The other hostages watched with fear, Marcus looking like he might say something until one of the gunmen shook his head in warning. Sarah let herself be led, but her mind was calculating. Once they got to the penthouse, once the dynamic shifted, she'd have options. Rodriguez and his partner were up there, armed and trained. If she could create an opening, they could end this. The elevator doors opened. The tech guy had successfully overridden the lock. They stepped inside, Sarah, the leader, and one other gunman. The third stayed in the lobby to control the hostages. As the elevator rose, Sarah spoke quietly. "This is your last chance to walk away. Take what you got from the front desk and leave. The penthouse security will kill you if you push this. They're 2 guys. We're professionals. Are you?" Sarah let her tone carry a weight it hadn't before. "Because professionals would have noticed that I've been counting your breathing pattern, tracking your weapon position, and memorizing every tactical mistake you've made in the last 10 minutes. The leader's eyes widened slightly. "What did you say?" "You have your weapon at low ready, which is correct for crowd control, but leaves you vulnerable to close quarters reaction. Your partner's watching the floor indicator instead of watching me, which means I have a 3-second window when these doors open where neither of you is fully focused, and you're standing close enough that if I wanted to, I could disarm you before you could shoot." The elevator slowed as it approached the penthouse floor. "But I'm not going to do that," Sarah continued, her voice still calm, still professional, "because I don't want anyone to die tonight. So when these doors open, and when you realize that the men up there are better trained than you thought, I want you to remember that I gave you an out." The doors opened. Sarah stepped forward into the penthouse hallway, the 2 gunmen behind her, their weapons raised. What they saw made them both freeze. Rodriguez and his partner weren't hiding behind furniture. They were standing in tactical positions, weapons drawn, body armor visible, with the kind of professional spacing that screamed high-level training, and they weren't pointing their weapons at the gunmen. They were looking at Sarah. "Bite," Rodriguez said, his tone carrying respect and confusion. "What's your status?" Sarah's demeanor shifted, not dramatically, but enough that the gunman felt it. The professional hotel manager facade dropped, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. 2 hostiles in the elevator, 1 downstairs with 3 civilians, Sarah replied, her voice carrying command authority now. "They planned this well, but didn't expect penthouse security at this level." "How copy?" "Good copy," Rodriguez replied. "Advise course of action?" The leader's gun came up toward Sarah's head, his hand shaking slightly. "What the fuck is this?" Sarah turned slowly, her blue eyes meeting his with absolute calm. "This is the part where you make a choice. Put the gun down, walk away, and maybe you leave this building alive, or keep pointing it at me and find out why 2 professionals are taking orders from a hotel manager." "Who are you?" the leader demanded, his voice cracking slightly. Sarah didn't answer immediately. She just held his gaze, letting him see something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. The thing she'd kept hidden for 3 years, the part of herself she'd locked away when she left the teams. "Sarah Mitchell, Lieutenant Commander, United States Navy, Cultural Support Team, attached to SEAL Team 3, Afghanistan, 2015 to 2019. 43 combat operations, 27 direct action missions, and before tonight, I was very happy being a hotel manager who never had to make these decisions again." The silence in the hallway was absolute. The gunman stared at her like she'd just materialized from nowhere. Rodriguez and Martinez were my team in Kandahar, Sarah continued, gesturing to the security guard. When I took this job, I told them if they ever needed work, I'd hire them. So congratulations. You didn't just try to rob a hotel. You tried to rob a hotel where 3 former Navy operators happened to be working the night shift. The leader's gun was still pointed at her, but his hand was shaking badly now. You're lying. Am I? Sarah's voice carried absolute certainty. Rodriguez, what's my call sign? Ghost, ma'am. Why'd they call me Ghost? Because you could walk into any room, any compound, any situation, and no one ever saw you coming. You were invisible until you needed to be seen. Sarah took one step closer to the leader, close enough that his gun was almost touching her chest. "Put it down. This is over. I'll shoot you," he said, but there was no conviction in his voice. "You won't," Sarah replied, "because your hand is shaking, your breathing is erratic, and you just realized you're outmatched. But more importantly, because I don't think you actually want to kill anyone tonight. I think you wanted money and you got desperate and you made bad choices. I understand that. I'm not going to judge you for it, but I am going to ask you one more time to put the gun down before someone gets hurt." For a long moment, nothing moved. Then, slowly, the leader's gun lowered. "Smart choice," Sarah said quietly. She reached out, took the weapon from his unresisting hand, cleared it with professional efficiency, and handed it to Rodriguez. "Take them down to the lobby. Secure the third hostel. No one gets hurt. Police are probably 3 minutes out by now." Rodriguez and Martinez moved efficiently, securing both gunmen with plastic restraints they'd apparently had ready. They were professionals who had done this before, in harder circumstances, in more dangerous places. As they moved toward the elevator, the leader looked back at Sarah. "I had no idea." "That's the point," Sarah replied. "You were never supposed to." 10 minutes later, Chicago PD's SWAT team entered the lobby to find 3 suspects already secured, all hostages safe, and a night manager calmly giving statements to the responding officers. The SWAT commander, a lieutenant named Reeves, took one look at the situation and frowned. "Explain to me how a hotel manager disarmed and detained 3 armed suspects before we arrived." Sarah was back in professional hotel manager mode, her voice polite and accommodating. "I had help from my security team. They responded appropriately to the threat." "Your security team," Reeves repeated, looking at Rodriguez and Martinez, noting their posture, their bearing, the way they'd secured the suspects. "Let me guess, former military?" "Yes, sir," Rodriguez replied. "Navy. And you?" Reeves asked Sarah. "I worked in hospitality," Sarah replied carefully. Reeves wasn't buying it. He pulled Sarah aside, away from the other officers. "I know operations when I see them. This wasn't security guards getting lucky. This was tactical coordination. Someone trained these guys, or someone who knew what they were doing ran point. Which was it?" Sarah was quiet for a moment. She'd spent 3 years being invisible, 3 years being just a hotel manager, 3 years trying to forget that she'd been someone else before. But tonight had broken that cover, and there was no putting it back together. "Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, Naval Special Warfare, retired 3 years ago." Reeves' eyebrows rose. "Naval Special Warfare. You're a SEAL, Cultural Support Team attached to SEAL Team 3. It's complicated." "CST," Reeves nodded slowly. "Female operators working with SEAL teams in Afghanistan. I've heard of the program, thought it was classified. Parts of it still are. And now you manage a hotel. I needed something quiet," Sarah said simply. "Something where the worst problem was overbooked rooms and angry guests. I was done with the other life. Looks like the other life isn't done with you." Sarah looked around the lobby at the police, the suspects, the staff, who were all staring at her differently now. Marcus, the desk clerk, looked like he'd just discovered his manager was actually a superhero. The general manager had arrived and was standing in shock, trying to process what had happened. "Yeah," Sarah said quietly. "Looks that way." Over the next few days, the story leaked. Not the classified parts, but enough. "Hotel manager reveals Navy background after stopping armed robbery," read the Tribune headline. Her staff treated her differently, with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. Guests recognized her from the news and asked for autographs, which she politely declined. The general manager called her into his office on the 3rd day. "Sarah, I need to know if you're planning to stay," he said carefully. "Because if you are, we need to figure out how to handle this attention. And if you're not, I understand." Sarah looked out his office window at the Chicago skyline, thinking about 3 years of relative peace, of pretending to be someone simple, of believing she could just be normal. "I don't know," she admitted. "I came here because I wanted to disappear, wanted to be someone who dealt with small problems, lived a quiet life, but I'm not sure that's possible anymore." That evening, as Sarah was finishing her shift, Rodriguez approached her at the front desk. "Boss, can we talk?" They went to the empty business center. Rodriguez looked uncomfortable, like he had something difficult to say. "Martinez and I have been talking. After what happened, after seeing you operational again, we wanted you to know something. We've both been doing private security for 3 years, same as you've been managing hotels. And we're both going through the same thing you are, trying to figure out who we are now that we're not operators anymore." "It's hard," Sarah agreed. "It is. But watching you tonight, watching how you handled that situation, we remembered something. You taught us that being an operator isn't about where you work or what uniform you wear. It's about how you think, how you respond, how you protect people invisible even when it's not your job anymore. I'm a hotel manager, Rodriguez. That's all I am now. No, ma'am, Rodriguez said respectfully. You're Lieutenant Commander Sarah Mitchell, who happens to manage a hotel. There's a difference. After he left, Sarah sat alone in the business center, thinking about identity and purpose and the impossibility of truly leaving who you were behind. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. This is Captain Reeves, CPDSWAT. Got your number from Rodriguez. We could use someone with your experience consulting on hostage situations. Nothing official, just advice when situations get complex. Interested? Sarah stared at the message for a long time. This was the choice. Keep trying to be invisible, or accept that some parts of yourself couldn't be buried no matter how hard you tried. She typed back, consulting only. I'm not coming back full-time, but yes. 6 months later, Sarah Mitchell was still the night manager at the Grand Meridian Hotel, still wore the blazer, still handled complaints about room service. But twice a month, she consulted for Chicago PD on hostage negotiations. Once a month, she taught crisis management to hotel security teams across the city. And occasionally, very quietly, she advised on situations where someone needed to be invisible, to walk into dangerous places, to do things that required both courage and discretion. The staff knew now. The guests who paid attention knew. But most people still just saw a hotel manager, professional and forgettable, exactly the way Sarah had learned to be in Afghanistan, where being underestimated was survival. One night, a young woman in a Navy uniform checked in, heading to recruiting duty at Great Lakes. She noticed Sarah's posture, the way she scanned the lobby, something in her bearing that felt familiar. You serve? The sailor asked quietly. Sarah smiled slightly. Long time ago. What rate? It's complicated. But yes, I served. The sailor nodded, understanding without needing details. Thank you for your service, ma'am. Thank you for yours, Sarah replied. After the sailor left, Sarah returned to her work, checking reservation, responding to emails, being the hotel manager everyone expected to see. But she was also something else, something most people would never know, and that was exactly how it should be. Some warriors retire. Others just change uniforms and keep doing what they were trained to do. Protect people, solve problems, serve without recognition. Sarah Mitchell was done being invisible by accident. Now she was invisible by choice, and that made all the difference. Have you ever met someone whose calm in crisis revealed a past they never talked about? Share their story in the comments. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who learn to be ordinary, who serve in silence, who protect without needing anyone to know. Subscribe to Secrets Never Told for more stories of hidden warriors and unbreakable duty.